You good, Chuck? Call to order the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Stand pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we need to do a roll call? No, okay.
Not for committee.
Tonight's discussion is just the options and updates on our solar options and what we're proceeding with. And Chuck?
Yeah, so nothing's changed since our last building and grounds meeting. So I'll give you an update. There is one update that's going to be on the board agenda tonight, and that's if you guys vote, we're going to retain the services of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurick, LLC. This is a law firm that legalizes, or they have a department that specializes in solar. So that would be the only new update. Now, what this law firm would provide to the district is initially I was working with a company that Penelec provided me to, which was PA Solar Center. At first I thought they were going to be able to do a comparative cost analysis to whatever option we select based off our Penelec bills for a year and interval data. They came back to me and said they couldn't do it unless we were utilizing them for an RFP. So they declined to do the comparative cost analysis. This law firm is saying they can do it. I think it's also important. I think Director Burke has said it multiple times. They'll also cross our T's and dot our I's, since none of us are solar experts, to make sure we're not missing anything. So that's kind of where we're at. So I did provide to the public on the stage and to everybody on stage the 10 different cost analysis that have already been provided to you that I broke down. The green, obviously, you know, our cash flow positive, and the red, anything negative, you know, and just kind of what it offsets in regard to district usage based on the comparative cost analysis that they did. I know you guys were very heavy on option 6. You know, if option 6 is still where you guys want to go, if motion passes to utilize this law firm, I would then provide them all the data aligned to that option to begin to build the comparative cost analysis to our Penelec bills. If you want more than one, I would just need to be directed on kind of what I'm providing to them. But there's nothing else new, purely besides the motion to retain the services of that law firm.
From my memory, I believe it was option 6, and then there was option 9, I believe. Those two were the only two that were really being discussed. But option 6 seemed to have the favor of John and I, and a bunch of the board members as well, because they were at the meeting. And then, Bill, you wanted?
I want number 9.
Number 9.
Yeah, option 6 was the closest we can get to 100% offset without utilizing Mahoopity.
Right, option 9, I think, did not have a ground array at the PC, if I remember correctly. I'm sorry, at the PC, and it would have preserved the practice field behind it. I think that was the reason I had spoken about option 9 last time. But I think that, if I remember correctly, and I just looked at this about an hour ago, so you'd think I'd remember it exactly, but I think that the board was leaning toward option 6 at that point.
Correct.
Which would put a ground array at the PC behind the school, not on the varsity soccer field, but like behind that area.
Bill, why did you want 9 versus, what were you thinking?
Number 1, I didn't get a chance to look today, but you're supposed to have so many acres of ground for the high school and everything. We are landlocked in here. The only ground we have is at Mahoopany. And I do not want to see taken up playing field behind the primary building. We need every inch of ground we have for sports. And number 9, I think that's roughly 120-some%. You need to start out at over 100% because you lose X amount of percent per year over this. And if once you start getting down in the low 90s and down, you're going to be paying that plus electric bill. that's my thoughts.
I believe option 9 also included $1 million for potential roof replacement at the primary center, which, if I recall correctly from Director Shapolsky, he had said that really he's not sure that that's required at this time, that the roof on the primary center is in very good shape. So if we did choose to end up going with number 9, potentially we could also eliminate that $1 million, and the savings would increase, I would imagine, because they're not outlaying $1 million in a roof replacement.
Yeah, my understanding is putting it on the roof, that it saves the roof for quite a while.
Yes.
Yeah, the bifacial panels will support the roof. It helps, with anything weather-related, it helps support the roof. Again, they float, if you remember, there's nothing drilled in besides a couple holes where the cables run. I think it's important to remember whatever option you're looking at with this annual energy offset, the projections. If you remember what I sent out in regard to actual actual generation versus projection on any project that Greenworks has ever done, they've always been within the 10%. But that's also to the good and bad. So 100% can be 90 or it can be 110. And then you're correct. There's degradation of the panels year in, year out, where they'll lose production. It's not at a fast pace, but it will occur.
My other concern is putting it on the ground right up against the neighbors down behind Roslyn. I don't think it's going to be a good partnership. And you got to worry about if somebody doesn't like it. The schools that we visited, they had problems with stones and golf balls busting up panels.
They do, yeah. We visited a school. We asked about damage yearly, annually. They said, funny enough, it was golf balls, and sometimes a hawk or something would drop something from the air on a panel. Replacement, if I remember correctly, or what they budget to fix the panels yearly was low, John, wasn't it? Like a couple thousand a year? That's nothing. Yeah, it's minimal. But there are broken panels, and it was from golf balls and animals.
And that's why with the room you have up at Mahopany, you're not going to be putting it right on top of neighbors. You've got all kinds of room to spread out and get some money back.
Yeah, utilizing Mahopany, just to remind the board, definitely allows us to go well over 100%. It's not within the 2-mile net metering. Yeah, so we have to depend on legislation, which, John, I don't know if you have, but I haven't heard anything changing with legislation. But like Director Burke has stated, we become sellers then, depending on that legislation, selling back, yeah. Again, we just don't know what the future holds in regard to legislation and solar.
Because if I remember rightly, the other schools that we visited, they were right around 90, 95%, and they were both adding on to increase to get over 100.
Yeah, Midwest they're trying to go at phase 3. They're at phase, they did a first phase, a second phase, now they're looking to do a third phase. Ground end roof.
Were they just trying to do that because, just to say they were off the grid, or because it wasn't paying out?
Midwest is doing it just because, from what was explained to us, it's lucrative to the district. They're offsetting. They have the funding to buy it out. They plan on buying this out after year 5, which truly increases the cumulative net cash flow. Also, once they buy it out, they're only paying distribution back to the grid. They're generating their own electricity close to 100%.
But they initially went with a lower percentage and then they added on, correct?
They did. Yeah, they had a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I can't remember what the superintendent, I don't know, John, if you remember what he said, why they did it in phases. I don't know if it was funding. I can't remember what he said. I know he said, all I remember him saying, they loved it so much they're adding phases in. They're trying to add a third phase.
So in the long run, if we like it, we can always add up at Mahopany or
Correct.
put on the roof or add on to it instead of putting all the eggs in one basket and say, we might not like it at first.
You can.
Any other?
Well, I think the other thing is, I think the thing that's tough, and maybe this is what the law firm would help us with too, is like if we, you know, I don't know what the long-term plan is for Mahoopany. Like, we don't have students there, there's uses for it. I don't know that we need to own it forever, and trying to sell it with solar would maybe good, maybe bad, I don't know. Maybe we do it in a phased approach where we plop it in, we see what it does, and then put more up in Mahoopany because there's more land there, but I don't know, I'm just struggling with what to really do with Mahoopany, just because I don't know that it's part of our strategic plan long-term. I don't know that we're gonna grow to the size of ever needing that again, right?
Not anytime in the near future.
Yeah,
That's
right.
for the foreseeable future, I should say.
Right, so it would be kind of a bummer to get stuck with putting, like having to keep the infrastructure of Mahoopany purely because we ended up building something up there. I guess you could
Right,
always
and
tear the school down, but.
I think that becomes like cost analysis, because we know we have gas revenue coming, right? So,
Yep.
and if we start generating significant revenue from the solar, then maybe it's worth maintaining it, and that's something that'll have to be explored, but, you know, certainly I understand your concern. I think the other thing that's worth noting at this meeting is that Dr. Supan has still been actively talking to our bond partners and doing analysis on whether a lease to own or a straight own would be better, because with all the new legislation or recent legislation, we also qualify for all those same benefits. Essentially that they're giving their investors and, you know, passing the cost on to us, but they're taking a cut of that.
Yeah.
So we are exploring that. That process could look very different if we want to own it from day one. But we are exploring every avenue on the financial side. I mean, we want the best deal for Tunkhannock.
Yeah.
Yeah, they believe we're in a position, just so everybody knows, where if we wanted to explore the owning from the start, we're in a position to do that financially and get the 4% tax credit. We would just have to be able to float it financially. We don't get that credit till the system turns on, which can be 12 to 18 months. But when it turns on, then we get the 40% tax credit on a $9.5 million project. There's roughly $3.8 million, I think.
So the other schools that have done it are generating additional funding on top of like paying for their electricity, or are they just like breaking even?
So it all depends. Like, there's been projects that people have done under 100%, and then some have gone well above. So it just depends on the situation or the specific location and what they did in regard to their arrays and how they did it. The one thing I tell you about that chart is they've come pretty close to what they projected.
Yep.
On everything.
And there are districts that are selling back to the grid and are making more than 100% of required electricity.
Like if you want to broker the SRECs, like, you know, these companies like Greenworks will do it for $2 or $3 a credit. I know they're, like when we talk to Midwest, they have a cash flow from that SREC where they immediately, when they get it and they tell them it's high, they sell it, and then that's a positive cash flow they get. So like, yeah.
That's how they're paying off their system quicker.
Yeah.
And they're just,
honestly.
yeah,
That's smart.
and they're just banking that.
Well, I'll tell you what I see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think at some point we'll be putting some kids back in Mahoopany, and then that's going to require AC up there and stuff, and bigger use of electricity, and that's another reason I think we should have more at Mahoopany. And another thing, it's just, the way I look at this, it's just like buying a vehicle. If you buy everything you want the first shot, but if you want to cheap shoe it, you buy enough, and then you end up adding accessories after on your own, and it just doesn't always fit in and work together. I've been there, I've seen that, done that.
I mean, personally, I like option 9. I think I said that at our last meeting that we talked about it. You know, but ultimately, it's the will of the board. I mean, there has to be a consensus of the board as to what direction they want to go and what people honestly are comfortable with. 9 is a big project. You know, if it's offsetting 127% of electricity, that's a bigger project than 6. There's no question about it.
Even the little one's a big project.
No, they're all
They're all big
yes.
projects.
Correct.
It's the
Let me
size of the
correct
bag,
that. You know, we're talking about a serious capital project, right? If we decide, or if the board decides to move ahead, this is a serious, very large capital project. It's just how much do we want to dip our toe into the water? Do we want to go that extra amount?
Can the law firm look at both options?
So that was what I was gonna say too, like I just need to be directed on what you, if you vote to retain the legal services of this law firm that can specialize in solar, what am I asking them to do a comparative cost analysis on? If it's multiple, then it's multiple. It will certainly, I assume, require more time, which is more fees, but I still think if you're looking at two options, my opinion is it's worth it.
I would say it's gonna be on multiple options. This way we cover our bases in the whole board, and then we'll bring it to the board vote on everything we got.
I personally, I think that's wise. I mean, if we're gonna be, exploring potentially these two options, let's have an expert weigh in on them.
Work for you, Bill?
Yeah, like I said, I still favor mine because I see the government are gonna start issuing face masks again on Monday, mask and everything. They're pushing COVID again.
Who is? I'm sorry, I missed
The
that.
government's, they're gonna start handing out, is it COVID test or face masks coming next week?
Oh, I saw that the federal government is allowing
They're
families to
pushing.
get
They're
free
gonna try to
COVID
bring
tests
COVID
again.
back, and we're gonna end up using that building and stuff more. I'm looking farther down the road, I think, than most of them.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.